Welcome to Court Q&A. I'm Superior Court Judge Marty McGee, and today's program will focus on safety procedures for routine traffic stops. Our guest is North Carolina Highway Patrolman Shane Furr. Trooper Furr has been a law enforcement officer for over 20 years and has participated in thousands of motor vehicle stops. Welcome to the show, Trooper Furr.
Thanks, sir.
Incidents involving traffic stops have made headlines and have resulted in much discussion in recent years. This program's idea resulted from a discussion I had with my high school-aged daughter about what she would do if stopped by the police. The conversation I'm about to have with Trooper Furr is not intended to provide legal advice to people who've been stopped by the police, nor is it intended to aid law enforcement officers in gaining convictions. The idea of this program is to discuss ways to make stops safer for both residents as well as law enforcement officers. I intend to talk to Trooper Furr about his training regarding stops and how he typically handles these encounters with our citizens or folks visiting our area. Of course, not all law enforcement officers handles each situation the same way, but I hope that this discussion will provide some insight into the basic mechanics of a safe stop. Trooper Furr, is there a hard list of rules of exactly what a driver should do from the time the blue lights are activated behind a car to the time the driver pulls off after the stop is completed?
Well, there's not actually a set of specific rules, but we would like for motorists to pull over to the right-hand side of the road whenever possible and actually get completely off the roadway so that you're not interfering with traffic. Stay inside the vehicle and keep your hands in a visible area so that we can see them. That's usually the best method.
I take it that each law enforcement agency in the state provides training to the officers for how traffic stops should be conducted, but I imagine officers also have some discretion as to how they handle these matters.
That's correct. There's a lot of uniformity to how we handle the situations. A lot of times it depends on the environment or the circumstances surrounding the stop on how things go.
Based on your training experience, when blue lights are activated behind a car, what do you recommend the driver do with regard to stopping his or her vehicle?
Well, there again, if you're able to, the right-hand side of the road is where we'd like to see people pull. Sometimes on our multi-lane highways, people have a tendency, if they're already in some of the left lanes, to pull toward the median, which is usually more dangerous because the speeds are usually higher in those left lanes. So pulling to the right's usually the best area to pull, and then just, like I said, just keeping your hands where we can see them.
If a driver is in a somewhat isolated area and he or she is concerned about whether the blue lights are coming from a law enforcement officer vehicle, what could he or she do?
Well, if you look, you just got to use common sense. If you're concerned about whether or not that's actually an officer behind you, if you see a full set of lights that's pretty much the width of a car, that's usually a good indication that it's going to be a marked or an actual unit. I know our agency has methods that we use to help identify ourselves for the guys that have our specialty vehicles. We're taught to use our sirens to aid in identifying who we are, and then if it's at night, we can also turn on our interior light, which illuminates us and gives people a view of who we are and what they're doing.
And I guess as another option would be they could call 911 if they're still concerned after checking all those things out.
That's correct. If you still had concerns even after all that and weren't sure, that's one avenue that you could take. And if you're in an area that warrants it, you may be able to drive to a LIL-lit area or PVA somewhere where there may be some other people that might make you feel more comfortable.
Are there things that you do to try to put people at ease?
Me personally, I just try to be as nice to people as they'll let me be. It's not personal, it's business. Usually after talking to them for just a short period of time, they get a sense of that and start to calm down and realize that everything's going to be all right.
I've been a judge for many years, and whenever I see blue lights behind me, I get nervous, and I take it most folks are like that. I take it that you and other officers understand that's part of the situation.
That's correct. It's a uncomfortable situation because it's unfamiliar to most people, so we have a understanding that people are going to be nervous.
Well, I also guess that law enforcement officers could be nervous or have their adrenaline flowing when they stop someone. Is that correct?
Sure. We're always dealing with the unknown. It's not You know, sometimes you think it's just a simple seatbelt, and then you quickly discover that there's much more to it than what meets the eye. So we have to be on our toes and be prepared for the worst sometimes.
Many years ago, I was stopped, and I grabbed my license and registration, got out of my car, and started walking back to the policeman before he had a chance to get out of his car. And I quickly realized that's not what he wanted me to do. I take it that that's the general preference is for you to stay in your vehicle.
I think so. Most of us would like for you to stay inside your vehicle. Anytime you get out, there's becomes other concerns. You know, there's the possibility of getting run over, and then depending on what your demeanor or mannerisms may be, I mean, it could be mistaken for an act of aggression. So we just don't want people to do things that could cause us to have to respond differently.
If I'm stopped, should I turn my car off?
That's a personal preference. A lot of times it depends on, you know, the time of year. If it's during the summertime, people like to run their air conditioned, stay comfortable, or vice versa. You know, if it's the winter, you may want heat. Unless you're instructed to do so. Otherwise, that's up to the individual.
And if I'm stopped at night, is it a good idea for me to turn on the interior light of my vehicle?
That could be helpful. If you remember to do that, that would give us a better view of what's going on inside. It might help ease us as well.
Where should I place my hands?
Typically, if you keep them up somewhere on the steering wheel, it's a good place because their view able to be seen by the officers, and you know, that's usually what we're looking for most, is what somebody may be reaching for.
What about passengers?
Kind of the same situation. I mean, we don't ask people to hold their hands up over their head unless something would warrant any differently from that. But just restrict your movement. Don't get to reaching underneath seats and digging through things that, you know, that somebody could potentially be hiding something.
When you get to a car window, what do you typically say to the driver?
I introduce myself, tell them who I work for, and I tell them why I stopped them.
And for a routine traffic stop, is it pretty standard for the officer to ask for the person's driver's license and registration?
Those are the two main documents that you're required to produce. So those are usually what we'll ask for. Sometimes you may need additional information like insurance, but those are necessary, and what we need to do is we'd have to take some enforcement action.
Should I get those items ready when you're walking up to my car, or should I wait, or does it really matter?
It's not necessary. Probably it'd be just a good idea just to wait. That way you're not caught reaching somewhere when the officer's walking up and maybe thinking that you're trying to do something else.
If you stop a driver because you suspect that he or she is speeding, had an expired tag or something along those lines, you typically go back to the car and check their license and registration. Is that correct?
That's correct. Like on an expired tag, you know, we want to verify that it's actually expired, so we'll check that. And then also an individual's license status needs to be checked in case there's any type of suspensions that they may not be aware of.
What do you recommend the driver do during this period?
I'll try to remind people before I walk away just to stay inside the vehicle. You know, again, try to restrict your movement. Don't get to reaching around in the back seats or doing things that may cause us to be concerned about what you're doing.
If you write somebody a ticket, do you think it's worthwhile for the person receiving the ticket to argue about their guilt or innocence there on the side of the road?
No, that's usually never a good idea. You know, if people understand that our job is just to bring violations to the attention of the court, what happens to them after that is going to be dependent upon the DA's office, and then of course a jury or judge would decide your guilt or innocence.
Well, and of course folks could hire a lawyer if they have some questions about their legal rights. They certainly can do that. They could talk with the district attorneys about it if they chose to represent themselves, and ultimately that is correct. You could have a hearing in court and the judge can make a determination, judge or jury can make a determination about that. What if a driver feels that he or she is treated rudely? Is there something that the driver could do to let someone with the agency know about that?
Yes, we hold ourselves to a high standard. We want to be professional. If you feel like that has occurred during the stop, you can either call for a supervisor that's in that area, or you could actually go online to the North Carolina Department of Public Safety's website, and under the Highway Patrols heading there's an area where you can actually comment on a trooper about those occurrences, and it's also utilized for anybody that may have had a positive experience as well.
And I take it most law enforcement agencies, or all law enforcement agencies, I take it would have someone that a person could contact to let them know about if they think the stop was handled improperly.
That's correct.
As a judge, it's important that I maintain control of the courtroom, and that's not because that I think that I'm better than folks. It's just that that's my role, to maintain order. And I take it that it's your responsibility to also maintain control of situations when you're on the side of the road.
That's correct. The same reasons that you just mentioned there. We're not trying to say that we're better than anybody else, but we do have an understanding of issues that could occur if we don't stay in control. And when people try to do things their way, a lot of times it leads to problems, and we want to try to head those off ahead of time.
And I take it that you don't want the situation to escalate on the side of the road any more than I would want it to escalate if I was the driver being stopped. Correct.
We want things to go just as easily as they possibly can go. We don't want any confrontation if we can avoid it. So, you know, and if I feel like most people would feel the same way, or hope they would anyway.
Also, if there's for a driver who's driving down the highway and sees that another vehicle is stopped on the side of the road, there's a law that requires that vehicles move over if they can do so safely. Would you mind talking about that a little bit?
Yes, it's our move over law. It's been around now for over a decade. Unfortunately, we still don't get a lot of compliance with it at times. But basically what we're asking people to do, if there's a officer or emergency type vehicle on the side of the roadway, particularly on a multi-lane highway, is to try to move over a lane from where that vehicle's parked. And what you're doing is you're giving yourself some room for error in case something were to happen. If you're on a dual lane highway, obviously you don't have the luxury of changing lanes, so we just ask that you reduce your speed significantly.
Thank you, Trooper Furr, and thank you for taking the time to watch this program. I mentioned at the start, the purpose of this discussion is not to explain a person's legal rights or to aid law enforcement in obtaining convictions. I do hope, however, that it provides an opportunity for a reflection for what it would be like to stand in another person's shoes during one of these encounters, provide insights in how this trained officer handles typical traffic stops, and I hope it helps all of us handle traffic stops in a safe manner. I'd like to thank you again for watching the program, and I would like to thank Cabarrus County Channel 22 for making this possible.